Hi, and welcome to another episode of Project Peak Performance. I'm Dave Gibbons. I'm joined by my co-host, James Humphrey-Stone, and today we've got Mark Burgess. Now, Mark Burgess has been in and around my life for about the last 4 years, and he absolutely has fascinated me from the first moment that we met. I realized we were very aligned in a lot of our thought processes. And as the years have gone on, and I've watched Mark's progression and what he's done. Again, it's just absolutely fantastic. This guy has had his own TV show. He's a public speaker. He owns one of the most respected IT companies in the estate agency world. He has a team all over the world, all singing the same hymn sheet, all working in Turkey, in London, everywhere else. And he sits on his own. So he's got this team spread everywhere. And the community this company has is unrivaled by anybody else, in my opinion. So I want to get him on today and basically pick his brains to figure out what does he know that we don't know, and what should we be doing to protect ourselves as business leaders, our businesses, our teams going into the future with AI coming along and everything else that's happening. So I rambled on a little bit there. Thought I'd give you a little bit of a slice into who Mark is. If you're not privy to the information, you don't know who he is, here we are. So, Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
You're
Thanks
welcome,
for
mate.
having
You,
me.
you're
Yeah,
more,
I'm all good.
Lovely.
Sorry?
You're more than welcome, mate. Thank you very much for coming on. So, I suppose with what I've just said there, Mark, what's your take on my interpretation of where you are yourself and business at this moment in time? And then I want to try and break down what it is that you're doing that is different to what other people are doing.
Yeah, it's interesting to listen to. I mean, obviously, when you're in the middle of it, you don't really often take a step back to think about it that much. So it's all nice to listen to. I guess I wouldn't disagree with any of it. There's no reason for me to. For us right now, um, we're just continuing on the same path that we've always been on, really. I think we had a business years ago that tried to do too many different things at once, and I learned harsh lessons from that. And now we just stay focused on our sort of vision and where we're trying to get to. And as you say, the team stay focused on that as well. So that's where we're going.
That's brilliant. So how do you get, I mean, lots of companies and business owners, the reason we've got you on is our demographic, and most of the listeners that listen to this podcast are management level business owners and above, all running businesses, teams, everything else. And I've run teams. I've been pulled into podcasts to talk about how to build teams, how to keep teams enthusiastic. And I'm like, you really need to be speaking to Mark Burgess about this, because this guy is like tenfold on top of what I know. So I suppose the question is, how do you get to the point where you can sit back relatively comfortable as a business owner, knowing that the teams all over the world in various languages are all doing what they should be doing towards a common goal? And how do you even create a common goal that aligns with people so well that allows them to do this work in such a way that it causes you no stress and,
Yeah.
business?
Phew, that's a lot to unpack. I guess first of all, it starts with you yourself.
Mhm.
You know, if you start a business because you've seen an opportunity to make some money, then it'll go a certain distance, I suppose. But you have to kind of have a. I'm not sure about the word passion, but you have to have something inside of you that's going to want to make you really do this thing and really feel like you know where this thing is going. That is kind of essential, because you're going to meet people along on your journey that are going to need to help you. And if you're just explaining to them how you're going to make some money out of it, then that's not really going to go very far. So, I had a passion for estate agency, and I looked across and could see that industry was going to suffer a horrible death over the course of the next 10 years, and felt that there was something I could do about it. So my passion started from there. I guess the next thing that I learned along the journey was core values. So core values has become something that a lot of people feel like they have. Most companies feel like they have core values, but I would say of all the companies I've met, regardless of whether it was a state agency or any others, probably 1% of them actually have core values the way that they're supposed to be implemented in a company. And I think when we did that, our company completely changed. So 2009, I started Iceberg. We introduced core values probably around about 2016. And it was just a totally transformational process for us. Probably the main thing that led us to what you're talking about, whereby you don't have to really manage your team in terms of getting them to want to do the work and to want to be motivated. But it's a hard process because most people are in a situation whereby they feel like it's hard to find staff.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't really want to put any more extra barriers in the way of finding staff. I know when I was an estate agent back in, the 90s, I was working for an estate agency that was growing so fast the criteria was basically a heartbeat, and then you could work there. So core values, the way core values works, if I just try and break that down in a really short space of time, is if I cut you in half as an owner, there should be some things that really stand out as your values around work, maybe outside of work as well, but certainly around work. And they can't be things that are just table stakes. So, a lot of people end up saying things like trustworthy, but trustworthy isn't something worth putting on a wall. Like if someone's not trustworthy, they're not going to be working for you anyway. We don't need to measure it. It's going to come up in conversation. So when we went through this process, I cut through myself and sort of looked at what I stood for, regardless. I didn't have to try. It wasn't things that I aspirationally wanted to be, just what I was. And the main things were self-development. Obviously, I was committed because it was my business. And I wanted to know what everybody was doing. So they were the things that we come up with. Everybody's will be different. It's quite easy to just jump on somebody else's because a lot of the time you sort of hear other people's core values and think, oh, that's good. That's me as well. And maybe some of them are. But we had those. And then you do a bit of a marketing spin on it and we turned it into be an expert, be committed, be connected. Yep. It doesn't, that's not how it started. It just started as self-development, being committed and being connected. And then you think about what do they actually mean? What do they stand for? So if we hire a new member of staff now, the way it works is, I don't really get involved in the interviews that much anymore, but I always have a final interview with somebody when the line managers have decided this is the person we want. Mm-hmm. I have a meeting with them and I say to them, look, I just want to talk to you about my expectations because, we might not talk that much and you might often wonder whether I think you're doing a good job or whether you're not, or what the rules of the game even are. So the rules of the game for me are simple. We've got these 3 core values: be an expert, be committed, be connected. I'm going to explain to you what they mean. And if you love that, then you'll get on well at this company. If you do these 3 things, you'll always be okay at this company, regardless of anything else. If you don't like the sound of this or you don't do these 3 things, just save yourself the aggro and don't work here, because within a month, you'll get found out. So what does be an expert mean? It means we expect you to do self-development. We're a company that's growing, and we intend to be much bigger in the future than what we are today. And naturally, if that happens, we will end up employing better and better and better people. And I don't really want to leave you behind. So I want you to come on the journey. So I'm fully okay with you taking time out of the day to do self-development. You can read books, you can go on courses, you can listen to podcasts, you can do whatever you want to take yourself up to the level where you come with us on that journey and have an incredible career. But if at the end of the quarter your line manager turns around to you and says, have you done any self-development? And you say, no, I've been so busy, I haven't had the time. Then if I was your line manager, I'd be saying, okay, that's cool, you can't work here no more. So that's something you have to do. What does be committed mean? I guess you think it's pretty obvious. What I'm saying is if it's 5:30 and there's something to be done, I don't give a shit that it's 5:30. I want that thing to be done. But that's a bit of a one-way street. So on the flip side, I'll give you unlimited paid holiday. You can take as much holiday as you want and I'll pay you for it. And I don't care how much you take, but don't let me down. And then on the last one, be connected. You need to stay in touch with every other department. I want you to spend some time sitting in the other departments. I want you to figure out what it is that you do that makes their life a fucking nightmare and what they're doing that makes your life a nightmare. And you can just solve the problem like quite quickly between you. As an example, I once sat in accounts and we were trying to set up the billing for this new client, and they said, oh, now we have to find out their billing address, and this takes a bit of time, and blah, blah, blah. I was like, I can just add that to the sales contract. And they were like, oh, that'd save us about a week. So they're the three things: be an expert, be committed, be connected. If you do those three things, you'll always have a place in this company. If you don't do those three things, you can't work here. It doesn't make you a bad person, but you can't work here. When we implemented it to that level, we only ended up with people that you look around and you go, shit, it's like having 15 Marks in the room. Now, that's not good for any other company, but it's fantastic for my company. And then you just have to be very strict with it, because some of your best performers, before you bring in core values, they don't know these rules of the game. So your old best performers, I had this sales guy that he just wouldn't do any of this stuff, but he was my top performing sales guy when we brought it in. And I was saying to him, listen, I need you to start doing more self-development. I need you to do this. And he was like, it's just not my thing, Mark. But look, I'm doing what I'm being asked. I'm selling all the things. And then eventually I just said to him, you can't work here no more. He was like, what are you talking about? I'm the top sales guy. I was like, I don't give a shit. I've been telling you for 3 quarters. These are the rules. We can't go anywhere without this. So it's hard at the time. Your team will self-police themselves. They'll start to resign. People will get new jobs. You'll fire people. And eventually you'll end up with a whole new team like we have, where it doesn't matter where they work. It doesn't matter when they work. It doesn't matter if they're in the UK, Turkey, South Africa, Australia, America. It doesn't matter to me. If they've got those core values and they're displaying them every quarter, we can't really go wrong.
Yeah, that's amazing, mate. What you've just said then is exactly why you are on this podcast right now. I'm sure James has got a few questions, especially with you having multiple teams. So on a flip side, you're very similar, James, in your business setup. Head office, multiple teams around. There's a lot of trust involved. You know, you've got that string out. So how is this ringing with you at the moment?
Obviously, I'm co-hosting the pod, and I've just stayed quiet for so long because there's so much in what Mark is sharing and what you've already said about Mark, Dave, that I'm thinking, I knew it was there, but we talked prior to Mark jumping on, didn't we, Dave? We wanted to kind of really distill the process Mark has gone through to build the culture and create the environment. And I think you've kind of shared that in a bit of a snapshot with the core values. And we equally, we're obviously a lot further back in our journey than you. We were only 3 years old coming up in July as a business, but the core values piece was a really, really big introduction for us, probably Q2 of last year. And that's changed so much for us in the way we interact with new people that come into our business, whether they be employed or self-employed. So I can definitely relate to that. And the only thing I wish I'd done is done it sooner, in terms of have that. We know what we want. Jack and I, my business partner, are very clear on what's important and what we're aligned on. So we just turn them into, like you have, be an expert, be committed, be connected. We turn them into our core values. So I'm then interested, I suppose, in the next phase, because you've had your core values in place nearly a decade. So that's changed everything. You talk about them self-policing it. So your team self-police it from around the world. Beyond the core values, or do you believe, different question, do you believe that your core values have essentially created the culture, or do you believe there's more to it in the culture that you've created? Because I've interacted with at least half a dozen people that work within the Iceberg business, and there is a real synergy between the behavior, the messaging, the togetherness, the expertise. So it all completely embodies your core values. So the question is, do you think there's more to it than the core values?
Well, probably there is, but I certainly think that the core values is a massive, like the biggest part of it. The problem is, like I say, is that people get too caught up with the poster on the wall. Like I was trying to say at the beginning, it didn't come from wanting a poster on the wall that was all started with bees and, looked nice, and then went in a brochure, and then, we had mouse mats made, and then it's stickers on phones, and then that didn't do anything. None of that did anything at all. It looks nice to the outside world. It looks nice to the employees. They can all wear a jumper with the core values on. That don't do shit. Like, what does it is regular, and I'm talking like every single quarter, there's a meeting where we go through the core values with the person, and they rate themselves and you rate them. They're either a plus or they're a minus on this core value, and there's nothing in between. It's like you're either a plus or a minus. A minus means you can't work here. So I'll give you another quarter to get back to plus, and then you can't work here. And it transformed the way I did management, because before that I was just an accidental entrepreneur. My management style was one whereby I'd let things build up, and then eventually I'd explode at somebody for no real reason, and we'd have an argument, and they'd think I was totally unreasonable. And this just removed it, because I was able to have perfectly nice conversations where I could say, James, look, you're a minus on this. Don't make this go this way. I really like you. Can you turn it around for me, please? And we'd get to the next quarter, you'd still be a minus. I'd be like, James, you got to go, but I love you. Like, it totally changed everything, because every single quarter, without fail, you have to do those appraisals and rate people on the core values. Otherwise, it's just not going to go anywhere. And then it just becomes so ingrained that as the team grows, you get to the stage where it's like, you could do the appraisals for your staff now, can't you? And down and down and down the company it goes. So there's people I've never really spent much time with in our company, but I know how their appraisals are being done, and I know how the core values works. I could jump in and do it if I needed to. And I think that I know what you're saying about the culture, and it's all the same, but for us that probably just comes back to that committed core value. You find things to link to your core values that make your company run. If for instance you did contact me and say, Mark, I know I'd want to know this if I was the business owner, and I'm just letting you know that, I'm not getting very good service from X person. I'd be able to speak to that person or speak to their line manager and say, how the fuck does this fit in with our committed core value? What's going on here? James says he's been in touch 3 times and no one's got back to him. Like, who's policing this core value? And someone somewhere would either go, oh yeah, this isn't for me, or we'd find that the appraisals hadn't been getting done.
I've got 3 letters to say to you, because I'm pretty sure I've just picked up off the back of what you've shared, what process you've implemented into your business to get to this place. And those 3 letters are EOS.
Yeah. Well, we didn't implement EOS. I met Julia years ago. Sorry, you don't probably know who Julia is, but Julia was the first ever EOS implementer in the UK.
Right.
Julia Lancra, and she's a phenomenal entrepreneur. She built incredible businesses. She built, we go to shopping centres and have people in the middle that sell like Sky TV and all of that sort of stuff. Like, she basically invented that sector and then took it across Europe and Russia and all of these places and sold the business. And once she sold the business, she wasn't sure what to do. She found the Gino Wickman traction stuff and became the first ever EOS implementer in the UK. And I met her either just before or just after she did that. We had a whole conversation about this, core values, and some of the things that EOS is, which I took from that conversation. And I still know Julia now. We do stuff together. She's on our EAX accelerator program. She does stuff with clients on there. So I've never actually implemented EOS or traction, but all of that idea is from that EOS.
Sorry, just to break this down now, what is EOS? What does it mean?
So there's a book by Gino Wickman called Traction, and he talks about an entrepreneurial operating system, EOS. Okay. What an entrepreneur could follow. I didn't know about the book really when I met Julia or when I learned any of this stuff. I've only read the book afterwards, and I can relate to parts of it. I never actually did Traction or EOS, but if you go in there, it starts talking you through the process of creating your core values and creating your quarterly, appraisals, and how you rate people and how you create a vision and how you create a mission, and the same stuff that we do with Julia with the clients on the accelerator program. It's just going through the steps of it's almost like it's a book, but it's almost like a training manual or a working
manual. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know what that was. Obviously, if it's from the book, but yeah, amazing stuff. One of the questions I've got, Mark. So I absolutely love the very clear employment rules within your companies, but a lot of people listening may be afraid of actually being that honest with their team members.
Yeah.
Could you give them an idea of how that can be done? I know you've articulated it really well, how you do it with your teams, but let's say now we're sat in a company, the company's 5 years old. None of this stuff has really been spoke about. We're coming in, we've read a book, we've bumped into Mark Burgess and he's had a quick beer with us and told us all this stuff, and we've full of beans. We go into the office on the Monday morning and we're thinking, shit, I need to sack everybody in here right now. How the hell am I going to navigate this? What would be
Yeah.
the start?
It's difficult because if I think back, you've got you generally you end up with some members of the team that kind of go, oh, this all sounds like quite a good idea, and some of them who sort of are rolling their eyes. I guess the best way of explaining in the start of it is that if you was to see a fox chasing a rabbit, the fox does all these incredible moves and bends its back and jumps over logs and goes around all these things, and it's incredible to watch the way that this thing can move. But if you hid the rabbit, the fox would just look like he was off his face. So basically, you've got to let them see the rabbit in order for them to know why you're doing this. You can't just go in and go, right, quarterly appraisals today. They'll be like, what are you talking about? There's only 7 of us in a room. Like, why are we doing quarterly appraisals now? You have to take them on it. And again, they'll have an opinion, and some of them will say, oh, I'm not sure it's necessary and stuff. But that's where it starts. I'm not sure it's necessary is where it starts, for not being rude, but for firmly letting people know, no, but this is my job. This is what I do. I'm the managing director, the CEO, the director, whatever you call it. This is what I have to do. This is my only job, is to make sure this ship doesn't crash into rocks. So this is how we're going to do it. So we're going to start all quarterly appraisals. It doesn't really matter what those people think. They can have an opinion, but we can talk about it, and then we'll do the quarterly appraisals. And then once we start the quarterly appraisals, again, you'll have people that are just not really into it. They're making you feel like a complete dick. You know, they're powerful enough in your company whereby that sales guy I had, who's just going, you know, this isn't really for me.
Yeah.
And you can either at that point think to yourself, oh, you know, I just can't get Sue to change the way she is. This is the way we're going to be forever. It's fine. You can go with that. Or if you want to change, you can say to Sue, like, well, you're going to have to do this because I've said this is how the company's going to work, and you're one of my senior members of staff. Don't screw me over. Like, everybody looks up to you. If you don't do it, no one's going to do it. And if you don't do it, that means my only choice is to not do this or get rid of you. And I am going to do this. So let's not go down the other road.
Yeah.
Look, we don't have to explode at them. We just have to keep explaining it over and over again. Look, this is how it's going to be. Are you going to come with us? Or should we figure something else out? Maybe you don't want to be here. Like, I totally understand. Actually, you know what? There's a great example I've got. My son helped me with this when he was about 7. Blew my mind, and I still talk to people about it now. So I had an employee who'd been with me from the beginning. Loved him, and several of my mentors had pointed out to me that this person didn't really have a place in the future of the company. And I was like, I'm not going there. You know, that's not going to happen. Whether it was loyalty, whether the conversation was just too difficult, I don't know. But I'd been having conversations with him every quarter about what I wanted him to change and how I wanted him to evolve. And he'd sort of said, yeah, that all sounds great. And he never just wasn't doing it. And I sat down. Well, I didn't sit down. I was driving along with Fraser, my son, once. I picked him up from somewhere. And his best friend was called Jamie. Like I say, he was only 7 at the time. And I said to him, if you was working with Jamie and he wasn't doing what you needed him to do, what would you do? And he was like, well, I'd probably have a chat with him privately about it all. And I said, like, yeah, but then what if that didn't work? And like, you know, what would you do then? He was like, well, then I suppose I'd have to like tell him he couldn't work there anymore. And I was like, but what if he got angry at you? And he was like, totally confused. He was like, what? Why would he be angry at me? I should be angry at him. I've been telling him, like, in private about this stuff, and he still didn't do it. Like, there's no reason for him to be angry at me. And my mindset on it just switched to like, what? I don't go into the office and fire everybody. I go into the office and tell them about the rules, and then we have chats over a few quarters, depending on how long they've worked with me, like how many quarters that might be, where I keep reiterating, this is danger. There's red showing now. Can we do something about it?
Yeah.
And then it's like, You don't want to do nothing about it. That's fine. You do your own thing. I'm not going to hold a grudge against you.
Yep.
And if the person started getting annoyed, I literally, genuinely would be like, I have no idea why you're getting annoyed at me. Like, we had this conversation, and no one really does get annoyed with you, to be honest. They don't. They do end up going, yeah, I've screwed this, haven't I? I've screwed this up. And it's like, well, you haven't really screwed it up. It's just, this isn't for you.
Yeah. Or rectify it, and you've still got a chance, unless you've obviously hit the last.
I mean, my experience tells me, like, it can't really be rectified, to be honest. Like, you can have the conversations, but these core values are things that are either in somebody or not. I'm awful at timekeeping. If I went to a workspace where they were like, one of their core values was like, I don't know, being prompt or whatever it was, I'd be kidding myself, if I thought that I was going to last, because it's just not that important to me.
Yeah.
And so if you can find people that do genuinely believe in what you're talking about, then everything kind of links back to it. And it's not really that much effort for them. I've got staff who don't give a fuck that it's 5:30, as crazy as that sounds. And people like Rob, who's part of your community, like, Rob can do what he wants within reason. I care about the outcomes. I don't care about the output. And everybody knows that. Don't get me wrong, they're all still obviously feel a little bit like, can I really, is it okay for me to do this? Is my job going to be okay? But generally, like, they're that way. They love self-development. They just want to get shit done, and they like being connected to people. So I don't really have to do much other than make sure that everyone does quarterly appraisals.
I think that epitomizes new age leadership, though, doesn't it? I think you encapsulated it in a sentence. When you refer to Rob as a prime example, there's no one that I've come into contact with at Iceberg, probably as often, so therefore it becomes more apparent with Rob, who is as committed to the cause as Rob is, but equally it's all with balance. I didn't know that you offered unlimited holiday, but that's then apparent with the way Rob operates. But the new age piece is that you're more focused on the outcome, not the input. And I think a lot of old school leadership, and I think the revolutionary part that people really need to tune into in what you've said there, especially in a state agency, is trust your people to focus on the outcomes, not the inputs. So rather than them being tied to a desk from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, then back in that office again from 9 a.m. on Saturday morning till 5:30 on a Saturday, like, help them focus their energy on the outcomes and the results you're looking for, not the amount of time you spend on the thing.
Yeah, I think I've got this funny story that I've told some of my staff. When I was an estate agent, I was probably about, I don't know, 19, 20, something like that. And I had this job in this quite posh office. And my manager was sort of one of the most highly regarded managers in the company. He's a really nice guy, brilliant estate agent. But worked a very different way to me. I was only young anyway. Back then I was probably high, but like, I'd go into my morning meetings, and I'd do the morning meetings, and every day I'd have early viewings. And what I'd do is I'd drive over to Wanstead Flats, which is not flats as in apartments, it's like a park. And I'd drive over there and I'd take my shoes and socks off and like stand on the grass for a bit.
Just get stoned.
Just have a little walk about, and I'd find that it would like chill me out, and then I'd go back to work. And I was their top performing person. And then one day he must have followed me over there or something. We sat in the morning meeting. He was like, "You got your viewing this morning?" It was like, "Yep." He was like, "Is it over the flats? You going over Wanstead Flats to have a little walk about?" And I was like, "Whoa, what?" But it sums up what you're talking about. Like, I'm stuck that. I gave him all the outcomes he wanted. Why did he care about the output? Now, I can see it another way, in the sense of like, if his core values were all around, making sure that everyone was there on time, making sure that people did a certain amount of, I don't know, phone calls or emails, then I might ruin that whole culture for him. So it's just a question, again, comes back to lining your sort of beliefs with the people that you work with. Me and him couldn't ever work together. He's brilliant. He was amazing estate agent. And like, I like to think that I was brilliant estate agent, but like, there's no way we could work together. He wanted, if you was not there 1 minute before like the morning meeting started, you was in big shit. I wanted to walk around on the grass with my shoes and socks off for a bit before getting into it. So that just wasn't gonna work out. It didn't make either of us right or wrong. Some people say to me, how can you give people unlimited holiday, for instance, unlimited paid holiday? That's just crazy. They just take the piss. But core value number 2 sorts that out. They're not committed then. You know, I need my support team to be able to answer the call, to be able to answer calls at a certain time of the day. So you lot figure it out. I genuinely don't care if you want to go on holiday for months, but don't leave me fucking stranded. You know, Rob, you've got a certain amount of people to coach. You've got stuff to do. Like, make sure all of that shit gets done. And yeah, you can go and do TED Talks and do whatever the fuck you want.
but you know, it sounds like you're being quite throwaway with that. But actually, that's the point, is that you don't give a shit about what they're doing, provided the productivity is there. But that all starts with clarity, and the clarity starts with your core values. So it all stems from your core values, right?
Yeah, and this isn't the way to do it. It's not an instruction manual that like, oh, you should work that way. You work that way if you feel like that's your core values. I spent a long time trying to work like that. That really successful estate agent that I told you about, to me, that was success, right? So even though it wasn't me, I'd wear a suit, and I'd the first companies that I had, I'd shout at my staff about being on time and being sloppy and having messy desks and making phone calls and doing emails. That to me was management. That's what I'd seen. And it takes quite a lot, I think, to suddenly stop and go, well, that may have been his way of management, but that's not the only way of management. Yeah. You know, doing videos, for instance, a lot of people have trouble doing videos. I used to have trouble doing videos. I'd wear a suit and I'd look like a complete cock, and then I'd have trouble getting my words out and stuff, until eventually I was like, you know what, I'm just going to wear a t-shirt. And people around me were like, you can't do that. You'll just look ridiculous. No one will take you seriously. I was like, well, at least I'll be able to say what I've got to say. And then if anyone wants to listen to it, that'll be good. And so I think it's not, outcomes over output. It's not unlimited paid holiday. It's not self-development. It's not any one thing. It's just having a look inside yourself and saying like, well, this is who I am. I completely disagree with Mark, and that's cool. But find loads of other people that completely disagree with me as well, rather than like some people that agree with me, wish they worked for me instead of you, and me having people that should be working for that guy. And
yeah,
your CVs and all that stuff, does it really matter? Is it that complicated? You know, do we really need someone who's got 5 years experience of this thing, 5 years experience of doing the same thing every day? Like, they've probably got what, a month's experience 58 times, right? So
yeah,
it's much easier to just find people with the right core values and then go, right, this is how I think the job works, but keep those core values and feel free to change it to a much better system. But make sure you keep the core values, and then you'll end up with incredible employees. My staff come to me with problems, Rob, Kelly, Yusuf, and pretty much I go, I don't know. Why don't you figure it out?
That's what they need to do.
I just wanted to know. Yeah, I just wanted to know that I could go and figure it out. It's like, yep, go for it. That's your job.
Yeah. I love this. I love the fact. I mean, even when you look at things like the holidays, the initial thought process, because it's new and we're not used to this style, we can be a bit scared of it. But ultimately, as a company owner or somebody in a position of employing someone, we know before these guys come in how much we're willing to pay over a 12-month period to get that job done. So let's just say it's a 40 grand a year job. And if the outcome is targeted and expected, and we know what that looks like 100 sales over 52 weeks, and you can kind of break that down. Does it really matter if they took 60 days off on holiday?
It might, if you're trying to build a process whereby there's a whole team. And, you know, I think I worked in IT recruitment, and I had by a long shot, by 5 times as much, I was the top biller than anyone else in the company. It wasn't even close, by miles. But I used to, in their eyes, it was like a trading floor, and I used to do fuck all in terms of work, really. I'd come in the morning, I'd send about 5 emails, I'd not do much else. And they had all these leaderboards of phone calls and emails sent, and I was bottom of all of them, and I was like 5 times clear at the top of all of the billing, and it was sort of ruining their whole trading floor. I was young, so I couldn't get my head around why they kept calling me in the office to have a go at me, but now I get it. Like I was destroying their whole system. You know, the fact that I was a bit of a maverick and had found a way of doing this thing wasn't a system that they could roll out en masse. You know, it may be possible if I went and worked in McDonald's that I could make a better burger than McDonald's can, but that won't be any good for them in their system, you know, because they're reliant on having people that struggle to tidy their own bedroom but can make incredible food, or at least do it correctly. So I don't think it always applies for every company, but I do think it still just comes back to what is it that you're trying to build. I was convinced that estate agency is going to face a big problem over the course of the next 10 years. That was back in 2018, and you can start to see the cracks in that appearing now, where you've got some agents that are really struggling and wondering how they're ever going to charge more when the fees are getting less and less, and you've got other people that are thriving and, you know, having a great time of it. So that was my kind of vision, if you like, and then I just needed people around me that were able to facilitate that. And I wasn't too hung up on the rules of it, you know. I felt like we needed our clients to get more coaching around this, because it wasn't just software. I couldn't do everybody. So, you know, Rob does that side of things. And if Rob can see a way of improving that, knowing what the end, you know, goal is, who am I to have an argument with him? Like, there's no right or wrong in this. Like, if you figure it out, great, no problem. And, you know, Kelly figures out customer experience side of things on the support side, and Yusuf figures out the technology. And yeah, I'm there. I'll talk to them all about it, and we'll bring it all back to that central vision that I've got and where we're going. But my only job really is standing up on top of the ship, looking like, right, which way are we going here? And to keep everybody safe. I was chatting to a guy at a conference the other day, and a mortgage broker, who was saying his team are not really doing what they're supposed to be doing, and it's difficult because his brother works there, and, like, you know, that's going to be an awkward conversation, and how would I deal with it? I said, you fire him. And he was like, what, just like that? I was like, no, not just like that. But it's your fucking job. It's your only job. They're all expecting you to run the company, and you're just letting it sail into the rocks. Like, you can actually see it's heading for the rocks, and you're doing nothing about it. It's like irresponsible. It's your job. You get to sit around sometimes and do nothing, or play golf, or go on more holidays. But the downside is that you have to do this bit. If you're not doing this bit, you're not doing anything. So you go there and you have a conversation with your brother, and you tell him to stop screwing you over and start doing it this way, or he can't work there no more, because that's your job. but in terms of, like, how to sell a mortgage, like, that's his job. He can figure that out.
Yeah. It's amazing, mate. I just love, this is why I wanted you on, just your openness to talk about this, and just your mindset, mate, on it is refreshing, to say the least.
Now, I spoke to an agent the other day, and he was saying, like, you know, valuations are not great, da 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 da. And I said, who does all the valuations? He said, this guy in the office does them. I said, okay, and what's he doing about it? He said, what do you mean, what's he doing about it? I said, well, it's his fucking problem. It's not your problem. You're running the company. He's doing the valuations. Fucking figure it out. Like, that's your job. Don't keep coming back to me and saying, oh, God, it's really hard on valuations. Like, what do you want me to do about it? Do you want me to do the valuations? You go and do something else.
You know, the thing is, though, Mark, the thing is, again, I said it earlier, the way you simplify what could, for some people, become an overcomplicated situation, like, it is as simple as that, right? And I think, you know, personally, being quite open here, sometimes people will come to me and say, I've got this problem. And my instinct is to try and find the solution for them. It's like a natural instinct to go, you've got a problem, you've come to me, I lead the business, therefore you're looking at me to take you on the journey to the solution. Where in reality, I've taken so much from this conversation already from the point of view of, actually, I'm here to lead and steer and direct. I can help you find the solution to the problem, but I can't be the solution, because you're forever going to keep coming back to me. And as the business grows and scales, that's not sustainable.
Yeah. Absolutely. We can sit and have a chat about it, but don't make it my monkey. It's your monkey. Yeah. Like, you figure it out. this isn't my problem. Like, we can, yeah, absolutely. I'm here for a conversation. You can talk about it, you can pick my brains. Absolutely understand where you're coming from. In the early days of my business, it was me in a bedroom, and then it was me with several other people that were basically just my hands, and then it was more hands, and every question would come back to me, and I had to give that solution because I was the one that started the company. And it was just a mindset shift to just going like, I don't know, why don't you figure it out? And suddenly, and people are shocked. They're just like, it. I can remember one of the first times it happened. We were going to launch this marketing campaign, and my designer and my content writer came to me and said, "We've done it all. We've written it all. We've designed it all. Just need you to check it over, and then we can send it out." And I was like, "No, I don't need to check it over. If you've done it all, it's great. Send it." And they were like, "Well, maybe just have a quick check." I was like, "I don't need to. If you're saying it's perfect, it's perfect. It can go." And they went, "Well, we'll just check it again." And I was like, "Yeah, do whatever you want. Check it as many times as you like. But when you say it's ready to go, it can go." And they were like,
If you find out if it's not.
You know, that I think segues, because you've talked a lot recently, and it segues in my mind onto a topic that I think me and Dave had discussed before that we wanted to pick your brains on, and that's behavioral psychology. Because you've obviously talked a lot about how much of a subject of intrigue that is for you, and it's quite clear in the way you communicate. But I think the big piece that you've shared there is for a leader to be comfortable with saying, "I don't know, you figure it out." That actually requires a lot of the ego being moved out of the way, doesn't it? And
"Yeah,
so
it
that's
does."
why then it segues for me into behavioral psychology and how that shift comes, because I think for a lot of leaders, they started it, it's their baby, they protect it. And so their ego will probably stand in the way. So when someone comes through that office door and says, "Can you help me with this?" It's like, it's my baby, so of course I can.
Yeah, I think it's ego. I think there is ego, but I also think, like, they're just genuinely worried. Like, what if that marketing campaign goes out wrong? I don't want a marketing campaign to go out wrong, but then if you correct it, you're just putting off the problem. Like, the
Yeah.
marketing campaign goes out wrong. Oh no, we look complete idiots to the whole world. First of all, the whole world's not paying attention. Most people have deleted it before they've even read it, so don't get too caught up on it. Secondly, I'd have sat down with the two people and said to them, like, what happened? Why did this happen? Now, we didn't have core values back then, but now I'd be able to just bring it back to, like, where's the commitment here? What's going on? You just did it and sent it. Like, oh yeah, but I'm not the best at proofreading something. You don't have to be. Get someone else to fucking proofread it, but don't send it out without proofreading it. Like, what's going on? So you can't get to the root of the problems if you just keep solving all the problems before they happen. You just end up with staff, and you end up sitting there going, "Oh, I can't find good staff. What's going on? Why does everybody not have any common sense?" You keep taking it all away from them. The behavioral science side of things, like, I love that. I'm certified in behavioral economics, and it's a big part of my life, a big hobby for me. It's just a crazy thing, because we like to see ourselves as people that make perfectly rational decisions. If we were given all the information, then we'd make the right choice. And I think it's something that stems from school, whereby you're taught there's one right answer to everything, and everything else is wrong. And that's not actually true, is it? When you get into the real world, our brains haven't really evolved for us to make perfect answers. We're not artificial intelligence, for example. We've evolved to make non-catastrophic decisions. Like, that's what we're very good at doing. And any of our ancestors that weren't very good at doing that died out. So we're all ancestors of people that can make non-catastrophic decisions rather than perfect decisions. And there are multiple choices for making non-catastrophic decisions. But when you start to narrow down into that, it starts to become much, much, much more interesting. Because if you look at sales, for instance, we're obsessed with this idea that if we can give, I don't know, the best service with the most features for the cheapest amount of money, then logically everybody's going to want to buy that thing. But universally, around the world, that has never, ever, 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 ever worked. Like, so, but somehow we keep coming back to it. And it happens in our team meetings as well, because people don't want to get fired. If I sit in your team meeting and you say, "Right, we're struggling for business, what can we do?" And I say, "Maybe we could do a special offer," and it doesn't work, your special offer doesn't work, no one takes it. I'm not going to get fired for that idea because it's a logical idea. But if I say, I don't know, let's try putting more dogs in our adverts, I possibly will get fired because you'll think this guy's just mental. So the way that the brain works is compounded by the fact that we're in an environment, possibly at work, whereby we feel like we have to try and keep our jobs. So I'm not going to go too far out of the box with this idea, this thinking, because I'll look like a complete idiot and run the risk of getting fired. So all my thinking is going to be quite logical, and it just doubles and doubles and doubles to the point whereby we're back saying more features, lower price. Surely everybody wants it. I can't work out why everybody wants it. Why does everybody want an iPhone? It's not because of the features or the price. So why? Yeah. Why does anyone want to pay 11 quid for a cheeseburger in Five Guys?
Yeah.
Why?
Because everybody else is doing it.
It's got nothing to do with features and price. So if we can somehow relax the rules in our company around what's going to get them fired and what isn't, then you can start to be a bit more creative, and you can start thinking about, how does this actually work? What do people really want? Because what they're telling us isn't true.
You hear that a lot. I mean, you recommended a book to me. You told me two things. We were sat in a beach club in Turkey, a couple of beers, some nice food, and he says, you need to read this book. I'm going to pre-warn you, it's a great book, but everybody around you will think you're annoying once you've read it. and to be fair, I read the book and he wasn't far wrong. We read the book and it just opened my eyes up. Is it Rory Sutherland? Is that the author? It's called The Alphabet.
Yeah,
so if anybody wants to read it, fantastic book, and really opens your eyes to what Mark's saying there. And one of the stories in this book, just to make it a little bit simpler, was dentists were struggling to sell toothpaste, or toothpaste manufacturers, Colgate or whatever, struggling to sell toothpaste. So they went out and asked everybody, why do you buy toothpaste? And everybody told them it's because they didn't want to go to the dentist too much. And they didn't want to have cavities. It was all to do with having to go and visit the dentist. So they made their adverts all around. If you brush your teeth with this particular toothbrush, you won't have any cavities, you won't go to the dentist. Nobody fucking bought it. Because the real reason that they bought the toothpaste is so they didn't have yellow teeth and didn't have smelly breath. But not one of them said that in a thing. So when you come back and you realize, then Colgate or whoever it was aligned their marketing to say, well, if you use this particular toothpaste, said fuck all about dentists or anything to do with cavities, it'll make your breath smell nice and it'll give you
people will want to kiss you. Yeah,
people will want to kiss you. Yeah,
that's right.
And it went
crazy. It's crazy because no one would say that. It's the same with all of the research that you do. No one would say these things, and I think it's if we're going on the lines of sales and that sort of thing. I think it's the brain, like I say, it searches quickly for a right answer to things. And then it just conserves power. If it thinks it knows the answer, it takes you to that answer, whether it's right or wrong, every single time, because it doesn't want us. We have 70,000 thoughts a day. We don't want to use any brain power that we don't need to. So, if I say, what's 2 + 2, you can't not think of the word 4. And if I say, what's the capital city of France, you can't not think of the word Paris. These answers just come instinctive. Yeah. It's a bit like when your web browser caches a web page. If the web page changes, it still goes to the old one really quickly. It loads all the old images and stuff, and you have to clear your browser and stuff. So our brains work the same way. What we do with sales is we try to do a sale to somebody, but their brain goes into long answer mode. It goes into, right, I remember this from school. I don't know which marry. I don't know which car I should buy, and so I'm going to have a think about it and do the problem solving and make out that I'm going to get to the right answer somehow, which is there is no right answer, right?
Yeah.
So this comes all the way back to the whole nurturing and the marketing and all of that sort of stuff. It needs to get somebody to the stage whereby actually they know the answer. They know the answer when it gets to the sale. If you're having a sale with somebody and they have to have a think about it, you're already fucked. Like the decision has to be made before. You go into an Apple store to buy an iPhone. You don't go in there and ask them like, I've been looking at Samsungs and Google Pixels and this and that. Now sell me your iPhone. Like that's not a thing.
Yeah. The
sale is done before the sales pitch, and that's only been a thing for the last decade. Yeah. So still, people are catching up. You've still got lots of sales trainers teaching you how to overcome objections and all of that sort of stuff, and people just find that shit annoying now. It's just not how it works. But we've only had 10 years of being able to do all of our research, if you want to call it that, to get our brain to the stage whereby it shuts down. It doesn't want to do any more research. It knows the answer now.
Yeah.
You want an iPhone? You want a phone? Buy an iPhone. I'm not going to think about it anymore. I don't even pay attention to the Samsung adverts, even though I'm quite sure that someone could prove to me logically that they're 10 times better and 10 times cheaper.
Yeah.
My brain's done now. It doesn't want to spend any more time on that. So if you can let people know who the best estate agent is, who the best mortgage broker is, all of that stuff, and there's loads of different ways of doing it without rambling on about features and all of that sort of thing, their brain will, that's it. You've done the sale. There's no sale involved, in fact. There is no, this is who we're supposed to use, this is the product we're supposed to buy, this is who I used to have my nails done, this is who I used to sell houses. Like, it just becomes much, much simpler for people.
You become order takers, and you'll, I suppose what you're saying there, I think Apple have done that amazingly well. Tesla, another great example of it. Yeah, there are showrooms now, but if you go into a showroom at Tesla, you'll find there's nobody there. You know, you just walk around, have a look at a couple of cars, and it's the only thing that you can do. But what they've done amazingly well, and we've not really touched upon this here now, when it comes to maybe the behavioral economics, sales, and sales psychology, is what Tesla and Apple have done really, really well is they said, this is who we are, this is what we've got, here's the price, here's everything. Now, just in our small industry of estate agents, one thing that nobody does, nobody tells anybody how much they charge, because we're all scared they're going to go somewhere else and go with align with what Mark says. They're going to go for the 999 quid one down the road. They're not going to do that. But nobody puts the price on. Whereas if we do, what I'm taking from what you've said there, Mark, I'm sure I'm right, is if you do say, look, I'm Dave Gibbons, I wear black t-shirts, I charge 500 quid an hour, this is what I can do for you, I'm just going to let it all out, here's what it is. I will then probably, you know, discard maybe 95% of people. But I only want this 5%. Because this 5% are going to pay me $5,000 an hour. They're well signed up for what I want because I've been upfront and honest with them. And my business is going to be more aligned the more I do it. Would you say that's about right?
Yes and no. I mean, well, it's right. But again, go back to behavioral economics. To make decisions, to make pricing decisions, the brain needs a comparison. It's the only way that our brains work. We can't just see a number and go, that seems good. It has to compare it against something, even if it's something irrelevant.
To calculate value.
Yeah, for example, if you're abroad and your wife sees a handbag that was £600 and is reduced to 199, it's a bargain. But if it's just a handbag that's 199 pounds, it's expensive. Yeah. So you have to compare it against something. You'd have to see that handbag that was 199 pound and then look around and be like, what else is here? Like, what's down the road? Should we have a look around first, and then we could always come back, right? Now, estate agents, what they do is they give people the price, and so the person goes, good, bad, I don't know. Well, they get another estate agent to come around, and they compare it against their price, or they look on the telly and they see someone like Strike advertising for nothing, so they can immediately go. They've got a comparison. So actually, what you need to do is you need to give them the comparisons. You need to, like, if you go to Tesla, what you'll find is that there's a fucking mental version of it. I don't know what it is, like the Plaid or whatever. Plaid
version, called. Yeah.
Right? There'll be a version that no one's supposed to buy. Even if you go to a nice restaurant, you'll find there's a bottle of wine that's no one's supposed to buy it. It's fucking ridiculous, but it makes the £80 bottle of wine seem reasonable. It makes the £45 bottle of wine seem pretty cheap, right? But if there was just a £45 bottle of wine, you'd be like, bloody hell, that seems expensive. Like, wine in Tesco's is like 11 quid. Yeah. So you can do the work for them. You can actually do the work for them. Showing them your prices, yeah, that's great. But again, it comes at the end. It comes at the very end, whereby I've been seeing your content. I've been watching your progress. It doesn't even matter if it's to do with estate agency or whether it was to do with, you know, peak performance, walking up a mountain, whatever it might be. I've been watching you. I've been getting to know you as a person. I've been thinking, to my brain started thinking, this is the person to use for a estate agency. Now, how much do they charge? It's at that point whereby, like, I need a comparison now. On booking.com, you go on and look at a hotel room, you'll see what seems like exactly the same deal in the same hotel with the same room, with the same everything. One of them's like £4,000 and the other one's £6,000. Yeah. And you end up thinking, Well, I don't know what the difference is, but the £4,000 one seems all right. Otherwise, you'd have to go and look at another hotel.
I love
So
that.
all of these things start coming into play. The more you start looking into, like, how does the brain actually make a decision? It doesn't work by going around someone's house and going, look, we can do everything. We can do floor plans, we can do photos, videos, get you on Rightmove. We've got a database, we've got this, we've got tracking, we've got everything, and I'll do it for whatever you want to say, the number. It doesn't work because the brain doesn't work like that.
So you're wiser going in and offering potentially, like you said, 3 serves. Let's say I'm a builder and I say, well, I've got 3 options for you. Number one, I can supply all the materials, sort your architect out, do the whole lot, and it's 50 grand all done. The other option is I can do the work, you buy the materials, or the really, really cheap option is you've got to buy the materials, you've got to labor on me for the next 3 weeks so that we can get this up, lift it up. Where do you want to go? 9 times out of 10, they're going to go for the one in the middle, because they see value in that. They see the pain for the lower end, and then they see the cost at the higher end.
Pretty much, like I say, I've got 2 stories that really sort of sum it up. I was at this mortgage event last week, and when I was at lunch, they were saying, yeah, but it's really difficult to sell insurance to people. That's the real problem, because they come for a mortgage, and that's fine, but then the mortgage is, say, 750, and then you say, oh, life insurance would be an extra 50, critical illness would be an extra 150, and they sort of end up pretty much going, well, we'll just worry about the mortgage at the moment and I'll do the rest later, and they never do. And I said, okay, well, what about if you just said it something like this? If you said, right, okay, that's all sorted, so price wise, there's 3 options. You've got the first option, which is called a protected mortgage. Basically, it's like you're wearing armor. Nothing's taking this house off you. The bank ain't taking it off you if you lose your job. If there's a problem in the family with health, like someone dies, someone gets a critical illness, you're sorted. The mortgage gets paid off. This house is going to be yours. Then you've got the closed option. It's a bit less than protection, but the vital things are covered. You're still a little bit vulnerable, but the vital things are covered. And then you've got what's called a naked mortgage, whereby, like, you're fully exposed. You can start paying for this mortgage now, but at any point you might get the house taken off of you. Which one would you like? Like, suddenly,
it's all about the positioning, right? Because automatically you've gone from, I don't want to be naked, and equally I'd rather not be wearing clothes. Give me the armor.
yeah, right. So, but you're probably going clothed or protected, right? Very few people are going to go see through the whole thing and just go, I'll go naked, please. They just can't. So it's the same thing. It's just framed differently. And the second example I've got is from Turkey. I don't know where these guys learn it, because it seems like they've just grown up on the streets. But you go into any shop, and ask, how much is that? They immediately get a calculator and put in a number and show you. And then they go, so I see a fake Gucci bag in a shop, and I'm thinking to myself, I'd probably pay, I don't know, 20 quid for that. I say to him, how much is that bag? And he goes to his calculator and he puts in 100. He goes, it's 100, normally 100. And then he does but I do it for 60. And now you feel a bit mean saying you'd only give him like 20 quid for it. So you're sort of stuck. He's anchored you up at this other price now. And now you feel like well, if I could get it for 50, maybe, like, I'd get something off of his price. Yeah. But I only wanted to pay 20 quid for it in the beginning.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. Right. Well, we've been going on now, guys, for an hour.
That's flown.
Everybody is massively flown on it, mate. So let's wrap this up now. I don't want people listening and dying off at the end. It's been fantastic to talk to you, mate. And some of the stuff you've come out with has been a real, an eye opener for me. And I'm sure the listeners are going to be taking some gold away from this. Hopefully, won't be sacking all of the staff tomorrow. They'll be realigning it and taking it from what you meant. But honestly, thank you very much for spending your time. I know it's very precious to you, mate. And I really appreciate you taking your time out to come and speak to me and James on this podcast. Is there anything you want to say before we go?
No, I don't think so. Like you say, like, there's no need to go and sack all your staff. Just look into these things. A lot of the problems that people have got can be solved psychologically rather than just the old-fashioned hard work and logical way of doing things.
Yeah. Well, Mark, thanks again.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.